Hello, friends. Let's get ready preparing for Flutter and Dart interview questions and answers. Let's get ready to plan your route. Dress appropriately. Bring essentials. Listen actively. Round 1. Basic Flutter and Dart questions. Subham, hi Ravi, welcome to the interview. Can you start by telling me a little about yourself and your experience with Flutter? Ravi, sure. I have been working with Flutter for the past 3 years. I have built multiple apps, including e-commerce, social media, and fintech applications. I am proficient in Dart, state management solutions like Riverpod and Bloc, and have experience in integrating RESTful APIs, Firebase, and local databases. Subham, that's great. Let's start with some basic questions. What is Flutter, and how does it work? Ravi, Flutter is an open-source UI framework developed by Google. It allows developers to build cross-platform applications using a single codebase. It uses the Dart programming language and its rendering engine, Skia, to draw widgets directly on the screen instead of relying on native platform components. Subham, can you explain the difference between StatefulWidget and StatelessWidget? Ravi, StatelessWidget, it is immutable and does not maintain any state. It rebuilds only when its parent widget updates. StatefulWidget, it maintains an internal state that can change during the widget's lifecycle, causing the UI to update accordingly. Subham, when should we use setState in a StatefulWidget? Ravi, we use setState inside a StatefulWidget when we need to update the UI due to changes in internal state variables. Calling setState tells Flutter to rebuild the widget tree and reflect the updated state. Round 2. Advanced Flutter Concepts. Subham, let's move to some advanced topics. How does Flutter handle rendering? Ravi, Flutter uses a declarative UI approach. It maintains a widget tree, and when changes occur, it triggers a rebuild. The rendering process consists of 3 phases. Build phase, Flutter calls the build method to create the widget tree. Layout phase, the framework determines the size and position of widgets. Paint phase, the Skia engine renders the UI owned. Subham, what is the difference between global key and object key? Ravi, global key, used when we need to maintain the widget's state even when it moves in the widget tree. It is often used for navigation, form validation, and maintaining the state of a widget across rebuilds. Object key, used when we want to differentiate widgets based on a unique object. It is useful in lists where widgets are dynamically added or removed. Subham, how would you optimize performance in Flutter applications? Ravi, minimize widget rebuilds, use const widgets and efficient state management. Use ListView.Builder instead of ListView for large lists. Avoid unnecessary setState. Use repaint boundary to limit widget repaints. Use isolate for heavy computations to avoid UI jank. Use Flutter DevTools to analyze performance bottlenecks. Round 3. State Management and Architecture. Subham, what state management approaches have you used in Flutter, and which one do you prefer? Ravi, I have used Provider, Riverpod, Bloc, and GetX. My preference depends on project requirements. Provider, lightweight, good for small projects. Riverpod, better dependency management and testability. Bloc, ideal for complex applications with structured business logic. GetX, simple and fast but can lead to messy architecture if not properly structured. Subham, explain the difference between inherited widget and provider. Ravi, Inherited widget, a low-level way of passing data down the widget tree. Used when performance optimization is required. Provider, built on top of inherited widget, offering better dependency injection, state management, and easy-to-use APIs. Round 4, APIs, database and dependency injection. Subham, how do you handle API calls in Flutter? Ravi, I use the HTTP or DO package for API calls. I prefer DO because of its built-in features like interceptors, logging, and request cancellation. I use Future Builder for simple API responses. Bloc or Riverpod for state management with API. Retry mechanisms for failed requests. Subham, how do you implement local storage in Flutter? Ravi, shared preferences for storing key-value pairs. Hive, lightweight NoSQL database, good for offline storage. Flight, relational database for structured data. ISAR, high-performance database for large datasets. Subham, what is dependency injection in Flutter and how do you implement it? Ravi, dependency injection is a design pattern to manage dependencies efficiently. I use get_it or Riverpod for the Round 5, platform-specific implementations and testing. Subham, how do you integrate platform-specific code in Flutter? Ravi, using MethodChannel to communicate with native Android, Kotlin Java, and iOS, Swift Objective-C code. Using platform plugins like URL_launcher, camera, and geolocator. Subham, how do you test a Flutter application? Ravi, unit testing, test individual functions using Flutter_test. Widget testing, use PumpWidget to test UI components. Integration testing, test the full app using Flutter_driver or integration_test package. Example of a unit test. Round, problem solving and best practices. Subham, how would you structure a large-scale Flutter application? Ravi, I follow clean architecture with layers. Presentation layer, UI plus state management. Domain layer, business logic plus use cases. Data layer, repositories plus API database handling. Subham, what are some common mistakes Flutter developers make? Ravi, using setState everywhere instead of state management. Not optimizing widget rebuilds. Overusing Future Builder inside widgets. Ignoring null safety warnings. Poor dependency injection practices. Conclusion. Subham, that was a great discussion, Ravi. You have a strong understanding of Flutter. Do you have any questions for me? Ravi, thank you. I would love to know about the team's workflow and the tech stack you use. Subham, we follow agile methodology, using Flutter with Firebase, GraphQL, and Bloc for state management. We also focus on CI/CD pipelines. Ravi, that sounds great. Looking forward to the opportunity. Subham, thank you, Ravi. We will get back to you soon. Please, likes, comment, and subscribe.